Juliet was radiant with the imminent arrival of her wedding to Lucas. She had spent long and intense months dedicating herself to choosing the ideal dress, carefully planning every detail of the ceremony, and imagining the magical moment when they would exchange vows before friends and family. Every piece of fabric on the dress symbolized the love and future she dreamed of building. However, on that fateful day, while returning home to pick up something she had forgotten, she was suddenly overwhelmed by an unsettling and uncomfortable feeling. An inexplicable premonition led her to silently enter her own house, and what her eyes captured left her completely paralyzed. At the end of the hallway, she saw Lucas, her fiancé, in an intimate embrace with her friend Clara. The cruelest detail: Clara was wearing her wedding dress, the one Juliet had chosen with so much care, while Lucas held her in his arms, showing an intimacy that should never have existed between them. Juliet's heart nearly stopped in that instant, crushed by the shock of the betrayal. The world around her seemed to slow down, as if time was playing with her pain, while she tried to process the terrible scene unfolding before her incredulous eyes. Words, which usually flowed easily, now wouldn't leave her mouth, and all that remained was a suffocating pain in her chest, accompanied by a feeling of disbelief and confusion. She felt completely betrayed, disoriented, and devastated, as if everything she had built and dreamed of was crumbling in a cruel instant. But amidst the agony, something unexpected happened. A flame of determination, of inner strength, ignited within her. Juliet decided in that moment that she would not allow that betrayal to destroy her. With firm and determined steps, she entered the room, casting a deep, emotion-filled look at the two traitors. This was the moment to face the truth, no matter how painful and crushing it was. "Lucas," she said with a surprisingly firm voice, though her heart was in pieces, "what is going on here?" They both quickly separated, as if caught in the act, their faces filled with shock and shame. Lucas began to mumble confused excuses, but Juliet could barely hear them. Her mind was a whirlwind, trying to process the brutal betrayal she had just witnessed. She stared fixedly at the wedding dress, now tainted by Lucas and Clara's disloyalty. That dress, which was supposed to symbolize the pure and true love she believed she shared with Lucas, was now a cruel reminder of everything that was falling apart. The pain was almost unbearable, but Juliet knew she had to be strong. Without saying another word, Juliet turned away, determined to leave behind that scene of betrayal and disloyalty. She knew the path ahead would be difficult, full of emotional challenges and disappointments, but she was determined to find her own happiness, even if it meant starting over from scratch. She was willing to do whatever it took to escape the cruel fate that seemed to be unfolding before her. Though her life was in turmoil, one thing was absolutely certain: she would not walk down the aisle to say yes to Lucas. With tears in her eyes and her heart extremely heavy, Juliet left the house where everything had fallen apart so painfully. She walked aimlessly through the streets of the city, trying to calm her mind and find some clarity amidst the emotional chaos that consumed her. Her heart was racing, the pain almost physical. Juliet knew she needed a refuge, a place where she could organize her thoughts and find some inner peace. Then she spotted a small, charming cafe with outdoor tables and the inviting aroma of fresh coffee in the air, which seemed to calm her senses. Without thinking twice, she entered the cafe, leaving behind the bustle of the streets and seeking some relief for her broken heart. Sitting there as she watched people pass by outside, her eyes fixed on a man across the street. He was there alone, seemingly lost in his own thoughts, just like her. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Juliet felt an immediate and inexplicable connection, something deep and intriguing that made her question the meaning of that encounter. Gathering all the courage she had inside, and driven by a mixture of impulsiveness and determination, Juliet decided to act. She stood up, crossed the street, and approached the man with determined steps, though her heart was still fragile. "Hello, how are you?" she asked, her voice slightly trembling but full of determination. "My name is Juliet." I know this may seem completely insane, but I'm willing to pay you 100,000 euros to marry me." The man stared at her, visibly surprised by Juliet's unusual proposal. His eyes reflected disbelief, but at the same time, a spark of curiosity began to shine. He pondered for a brief moment, analyzing the strange but intriguing offer he had just received, and then a slight smile appeared on his lips. "Why not?" he replied, accepting the challenge with a touch of humor, a smile forming. Hugo, as the man was called, was surprised by Juliet's unexpected proposal, but also deeply curious. Single and without children, he was at a point in his life where he was open to new experiences, no matter how unusual they were. The idea of marrying Juliet, a woman full of mysteries and courage, awakened an unexpected sense of excitement in him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Meanwhile, Lucas, his heart filled with rage and confusion, managed to track down Juliet in the streets. He saw her talking to Hugo, and a wave of jealousy and possessiveness overcame him. How could she approach another man so quickly? Taken by a sense of control and revolt, Lucas approached with firm, determined steps, his face marked by restrained fury. "Juliet, what do you think you're doing?" he asked, his voice filled with rancor and indignation. "You can't just go around and get involved with anyone. This is reckless and irresponsible." Juliet turned to Lucas, her eyes now filled with determination and a decision she knew could not be undone. She was sure that her choice to walk away and move on, no matter how difficult it was the only path. "Lucas, please," she replied, her voice firm, even with the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "This doesn't concern you." Hugo, the stranger who had entered Juliet's life so suddenly, showed unexpected courage by confronting Lucas. As Lucas continued to pressure Juliet with harsh words, Hugo positioned himself between them, firmly and resolutely. "You have no right to speak to her like that," said Hugo, his voice calm but full of authority. "She is an independent woman and has the right to make her own decisions, without anyone controlling her." Lucas was momentarily stunned by Hugo's intervention. He wasn't used to being confronted, especially by someone he didn't even know. Although his anger hadn't diminished, he cast a fierce, disdainful look at Hugo. "This is none of your business," Lucas retorted, his voice dripping with venom. "You don't even know what you're talking about." But Hugo remained unshaken, a true protective barrier between Lucas and Juliet. He knew he was risking Lucas' wrath by defending Juliet, but something inside him drove him to act, to protect that determined woman who had crossed his path so unexpectedly. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure you're subscribed to our channel, because the next ones will be even more exciting, and you don't want to miss them. So let's continue. Juliet, who watched the scene with a mixture of gratitude and admiration, felt strengthened by Hugo's attitude. She hadn't expected him to support her so clearly and bravely, facing Lucas with impressive firmness. As the tension between the three increased, Hugo remained calm and resolute, defending Juliet with every word and gesture. And so, faced with Hugo's unexpected bravery, Juliet felt even more secure in her decision to move forward with her plan. Knowing that her life could take new directions, full of possibilities, even if it meant starting over. With one last defiant look, full of meaning and closure, Juliet turned and continued on her way alongside Hugo. She could feel Lucas' angry and impetuous gaze burning into her back like a suffocating weight, but she refused to let it shake her newfound firmness and determination. As she walked beside Hugo, a mixture of relief, uncertainty, and even a touch of hope filled her. Juliet was taking a bold and unexpected step into the unknown, leaving behind a painful and deceitful past, while opening the doors to a new beginning. The future, though uncertain, seemed promising, and she felt that she was finally taking control of her life. Thus, in a surprising and almost cinematic twist of fate, Juliet found herself once again facing a choice that could alter the course of her life forever. Driven by a desperate impulse, Mixed with the courage of someone who had just overcome a great disappointment, she ended up marrying a complete stranger that same day. Hugo and Juliet formalized their union quickly at the registry office, exchanging simple plastic rings, temporary symbols of an impulsive decision. The choice, though impulsive, brought Juliet great relief, as by leaving behind the burden of the broken marriage with Lucas, she felt she was freeing herself from something toxic. Walking hand in hand with her new husband, a flame of hope began to glow inside her once more. Who knew what the future held now that she was finally taking control of her own life? Deep down, Juliet secretly hoped that her marriage to Lucas would be automatically annulled due to her new union with Hugo, while she struggled to reconcile the conflicting emotions bubbling inside her. Anger, sadness, relief, and uncertainty. A new concern surfaced in her mind: her parents. They, who had dedicated so much time and energy to the wedding preparations with Lucas, were devastated upon hearing of her decision to marry Hugo so suddenly. Juliet hadn't expected their reaction to be so intense. They felt deeply betrayed and disappointed, and the pain in their faces was harder for Juliet to bear than she could have imagined. The expectations they had for their daughter were brutally shattered. As she faced the growing pressure from her family, the weight of criticism, and uncertainty about her financial future, Juliet began to wonder if she would be able to find a way out of the increasingly delicate situation. She knew she was about to make one of the most difficult and challenging decisions of her life, a choice that could completely redefine her destiny. The pressure from her parents and the doubts that were starting to creep into her mind made Juliet realize that her path to freedom would not be easy. Even so, she made a courageous decision. She chose to leave her family home, even without knowing for sure how she would support herself or what awaited her outside the safety of her family. It was a choice that weighed on her heart like a stone, but Juliet knew that following her own path was essential, even if it meant facing unknown challenges. As she packed her things, gathering the few memories she would take with her, a feeling of freedom, mixed with deep anxiety, began to take hold of her. She was leaving behind not just the physical security of her home, but also the expectations of a life that no longer belonged to her. Hugo, who closely observed Juliet's complex situation, was sensitive to her moment of vulnerability and decided to offer his help in a concrete way. He saw beyond the immediate obstacles and recognized the strength and resilience that Juliet demonstrated with each step. Without hesitation, he offered her a place in his home, a more tangible and comforting form of support. With her heart full of gratitude, Juliet accepted Hugo's generous offer, feeling a mix of relief and security. Knowing that she wouldn't face this new journey entirely alone brought her a sense of comfort amidst the emotional chaos. Hugo opened not only the doors of his home but also his heart, offering Juliet a space of tranquility and warmth. He led her to her new room, a simple but cozy space where she could finally rest and regain her strength. Hugo wanted her to feel comfortable and protected, offering all the support and comfort she so desperately needed during that moment of transition. As the days passed, Juliet and Hugo began to share more than just a roof. They exchanged stories about their lives, laughed together, and slowly, a sincere and deep friendship began to form between them. The connection that had initially sprung from an extraordinary and impulsive situation was now beginning to solidify into something more genuine and strong. For Juliet, Hugo's home was not just a temporary refuge, but also an unexpected source of hope and emotional renewal. As time went on, Juliet felt a growing affection for Hugo. He wasn't just kind and attentive, but also demonstrated a depth of character she hadn't found in Lucas. Every gesture from Hugo, every word of support, seemed to touch her heart in a way Juliet had never experienced before. The special bond that united them was growing subtly but undeniably, creating a connection she knew she couldn't ignore. For his part, Hugo made a point of always being by Juliet's side, offering unconditional support in every difficulty that arose. He promised to be there to face with her any obstacle that fate might throw in their path. Meanwhile, Lucas, inconsolable and consumed by a growing obsession, struggled to accept that he had lost Juliet to a complete stranger. His wounded pride blinded him, and he firmly believed that, if given another chance, Juliet would eventually come back to him. One afternoon, while Juliet was quietly strolling through a park, enjoying a rare moment of peace, she was unexpectedly confronted by Lucas. His face was marked by frustration and repressed anger, almost unrecognizable. "Juliet, we need to talk," Lucas said, his voice tense, trying to remain calm. "You can't just abandon me like this. I deserve a chance to explain myself." Juliet felt her heart race, her body responding to the mix of fear and determination. She knew she couldn't allow Lucas to manipulate her again. Taking a deep breath, she kept calm and replied firmly, "Lucas, we've already discussed this. I've made my decision and now I'm happy with Hugo. Insisting on this won't change anything, please understand." Juliet's firm refusal only fueled Lucas' fury even more. He took another step forward, assuming a threatening posture, as if he was about to explode. "You don't understand, Juliet. He's a stranger, someone you barely know. Are you really going to throw everything we had away because of him?" Before Juliet could formulate a response, Hugo appeared, observing the situation from afar. He quickly approached, his body tense and his expression serious, positioning himself protectively between Juliet and Lucas. "That's enough," Hugo said, his voice firm and controlled but filled with authority. "Juliet has made her choice, and you need to respect that. I won't allow you to intimidate her or try to change her mind." Lucas, visibly enraged by Hugo's intervention, tried to advance, but Hugo stood firm, his eyes locked on Lucas, unafraid. "She's my wife now," Hugo continued with resolute calm, "and you need to understand that any attempt to harass or intimidate her will not be tolerated." Juliet, who had been tense throughout the exchange, felt a wave of relief and gratitude as she saw Hugo defend her with such courage and determination. She knew at that moment that she had found someone who truly loved her, someone willing to protect her, no matter what happened. Lucas, realizing that his attempt to win Juliet back was failing miserably, and that he faced a firm and determined opponent, finally retreated, though his face remained marked by frustration and wounded pride. "This isn't over yet," whispered Lucas in a low, bitter voice, his eyes fixed on Juliet before walking away with heavy steps, leaving her alone with Hugo. As soon as Lucas disappeared from sight, Hugo immediately turned to Juliet, holding her hands with a tenderness that showed all the care and concern he felt for her. His touch was gentle but firm, as if he wanted to convey safety and comfort to her. "Are you okay?" he asked softly but with sincerity. His eyes, shining with concern, searched for an answer in Juliet's face, as if wanting to be sure that she was truly safe, both physically and emotionally. Juliet felt enveloped by that caring gesture, and for the first time in a long while, she felt truly protected and loved. She took a deep breath, trying to control the mix of emotions stirring in her heart, and replied with a slight smile on her lips. "Yes, I'm okay. Thank you, Hugo, for always being by my side," she said, with genuine gratitude in her voice, acknowledging the value of his unconditional support. Hugo smiled back, and without saying anything else, he embraced her warmly, holding her tightly against his chest, as if assuring her that she would never have to go through anything alone again. "I will always be here, Juliet. Always," he murmured in her ear with a firm promise, sealing that moment of closeness. In that instant, while feeling protected in Hugo's arms, Juliet experienced a deep calm and clarity. She was more certain than ever about the choice she had made to leave Lucas behind. As the days and weeks passed, the relationship between Juliet and Hugo, which had begun in such an unlikely and unexpected way, started to transform into something deeper, more solid, and more genuine. What had initially seemed like a union of convenience and necessity was slowly evolving into something extraordinary. Juliet came to deeply admire Hugo's constancy, the way he was always present, offering support without asking for anything in return, as if his only priority was to see her well. His kindness, patience, and dedication were like balm for the scars Lucas had left on her heart. Hugo, in turn, saw in Juliet a light that brightened his days in a way he had never experienced before. He found himself increasingly fascinated by the determination and inner strength she displayed amid so many adversities. Juliet's laughter was a melody he wished to hear every day, and the long, deep conversations they had late into the night, sharing their dreams, fears, and hopes, became precious moments for him. Each day with Juliet seemed to reveal something new, and he found himself more and more enchanted by the woman she was. The affection between them began to grow gradually, like a flower slowly blooming, evolving into something stronger and undeniably real. Both realized, without needing words, that their relationship was not just a convenient arrangement or a mutual exchange of support in difficult times. Something deeper was blossoming there, something that began to feel inevitable. One night, while they were sitting on the couch watching some random movie, laughing together as if the world around them didn't matter, Hugo looked at Juliet and was overtaken by a wave of intense emotion. He realized in that exact moment how much she meant to him, how his life had changed since she had come into it. It wasn't just gratitude or affection, it was something much deeper. "Juliet," he began, his voice soft but full of emotion, as he turned to her and looked into her eyes. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Juliet, caught off guard by his confession, felt her heart race. But at the same time, a warm sensation enveloped her, and she realized that she felt exactly the same. Her smile widened, and her eyes shone with emotion. "Hugo, I'm falling in love with you too," she replied, her voice filled with sincerity and emotion, without any hesitation. In that moment, something changed between them. They both knew that what they felt was love. It wasn't something they had planned or even imagined, but it had grown between them, nurtured by gestures of kindness, mutual respect, and the strength they found in one another. It was a love built on the foundation of friendship, but now it had become something much deeper. One morning, Hugo woke up early with an enigmatic smile on his face. He had spent weeks planning something special for Juliet, something that would show her how much she meant to him. Today, finally, would be the day to make that surprise happen. He wanted to replace the simple plastic ring they had used in their improvised wedding, and properly symbolize the love and commitment they had built together. When Juliet woke up that morning, the delicious aroma of fresh coffee and pancakes led her to the kitchen. Curious, she followed the tempting smell, and upon entering, she found Hugo smiling at her, with the table carefully set with flowers and her favorite breakfast. "Good morning, my love," Hugo said tenderly, pulling out a chair for her to sit, his smile soft but full of expectation. "Good morning, Hugo," Juliet replied, surprised and delighted by the gesture. "What's going on?" "Today is a special day," Hugo said mysteriously as he served breakfast, his eyes sparkling. After a delicious meal filled with laughter, Hugo led Juliet to the living room, where a small blue velvet box was strategically placed on the table. He knelt before her, holding the box delicately in his hands, while his eyes reflected the deep love he felt. "Juliet," he began, his voice laden with emotion, "when we got married, it was in an improvised way, but with great meaning for us. That plastic ring symbolized the beginning of our commitment in a moment of uncertainty, but also of hope. Today, I want to give you something that represents what our love has become. Strong, true, and lasting." With hands both firm and tender, he opened the box, revealing a brilliant, delicate diamond ring. Juliet brought her hands to her mouth, surprised and deeply moved, as tears began to fill her eyes. "Hugo, it's beautiful," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Hugo, with a soft smile, took her hand and gently slid the ring onto her finger, as if marking the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. "What really matters, Juliet, isn't the ring itself, but what it represents. It's a symbol of my love for you, which grows every day. I want to spend the rest of my life by your side, making you happy and building a life together," he said, his voice firm and full of promises. Juliet felt a wave of love, gratitude, and pure happiness wash over her heart. She leaned in and embraced Hugo with all the strength she could, feeling more connected to him than she had ever felt with anyone else. "I love you, Hugo," she murmured emotionally. "Thank you for everything. This gesture means more than words can express." They held each other tightly, the warmth and depth of the love they shared almost palpable between them. The diamond ring sparkled softly on Juliet's finger, but the real brilliance lay in the bond they had built, a love that had overcome adversity and strengthened over time. I hope you enjoyed this fascinating story, so make sure to subscribe to our channel, and now watch the video that's appearing on your screen. See you next time.